to start up.
Live.
Alrighty, folks. Welcome to today's edition of the Left, the Right, and the Absurd. Tonight we have a new special guest. Will be joining us regularly on the channel. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi guys, my name is Patrick. I'm an anarcho-capitalist at Western Illinois University. I'm a sophomore here studying economics and political science. And I also, I'm a striker for the club team. That's pretty much the gist about me. I'll throw it back at you, Cole.
Alright, thank you very much for giving everyone an introduction. Alright, folks, tonight we actually have some fun stuff planned. We are going to be discussing not only the presidential election, but the effectiveness of voting and whether or not anarchism is utopian or not. As most of you know, many of us are anarchists, so most of what you will see is defense, but we'll try and see what we can come up with. See if some of us can play devil's advocate.
I might, yeah, exactly. I was going to say I'll probably play some devil's advocate tonight.
Alrighty, folks, I think we are ready to get things underway, so if everyone else is ready, I think we should get started here.
Let's do it.
Alright, let's do this.
Alright,
So, who's the first candidate we should discuss?
Let's go Democrats. Let's go Democrats first, and then throw it over to the Republicans, just because there's very few Democrats.
Alright, fair enough. Good idea.
So I guess we'll start with Hillary.
Sure.
Hill dog. No, she's trash.
I feel like everything she does is very fake, and I don't know.
Well, I think you could say that about any politician. Like
that's true.
They just lie. Like that's
but I think
their fucking
especially
job.
for her, because she'll go down into places like Georgia and South Carolina and throw on a fake Southern accent. It's completely different from her regular talking, if you really look at it.
A Republican in Democrats' clothing?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I thought it fit.
I feel like for a lot of politicians do that so they can appeal to more voters.
Yeah, it's just pandering. Like it's not anything special. They're
I know
not,
this.
like,
I shouldn't be comparing someone, but I know Hitler did that with when he was in front of workers, he would talk more socialistic, and then in front of the industrialists that he was speaking to. But
Well, isn't that like the premise of politics? Essentially, tell the people
it's vote buying. It's you fucking pander to as many people as you possibly can, so you get in office, and then you can do whatever you want. Basically, like it's a rough outline of it, but you get the idea.
The only thing I'm really worried about is if we do discuss every single person, I feel like we may take up a large amount of time.
Yeah, let's
We can
go
just
with
hit
the main ones.
few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bernie.
I think he's an idiot because he doesn't know the difference between social democracy and democratic socialism.
Yes. I'll take this from a capitalist perspective, like this thing.
I
go
think
ahead.
because he acts like a socialist, and people consider him a socialist, which is an issue on their part too. Don't get me wrong, but the fact that he actually labels himself some form of socialist, I think it's just disingenuous.
I don't know if it's because he's ignorant of it or because he genuinely believes he is a socialist, but
I think it's because he genuinely believes it. Like, I mean, you can't go find me, like, if I were to go ask 100 people, like, just random people what the definition of socialism is, I bet you I'd get, like, 2 or 3 that actually know what it is. Everybody else would be like, it's just government control of the economy or some stupid shit like that. I mean, that's the failing of the American education system.
Well, but I do think, though, that Bernie, he's able to market himself to both socialist, communist, and like all sorts of leftist ideologies just because he's kind of a refreshing kind of voice to them.
Yeah, that's what something I was going to say.
Regardless of whether he identifies correctly or not, he's just that voice that they can appeal to.
Yeah, like, what's a shame is that, like, because I'm pretty far left, is that I see other fellow leftists, whether it be socialist, communist, Marxist, or, you know, they'll go and they'll support Bernie Sanders because he's just a bit more left than the rest of the people, and that's a real shame because he's not going to do anything. I don't believe it for a second.
I think, yeah, and I definitely can see that, especially because I feel like Patrick and Eric would understand the same thing with ANCAPs and libertarian capitalists to support people like Rand Paul.
Exactly.
Right,
Bernie Sanders
exactly.
is like the liberal Rand Paul.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
They equate them because of their self-declaration, or in Rand Paul's case, his family, they
Right.
equate them with that sort of thing, even though they aren't that. And
Well, and I also think that because they're the only candidates that could actually win a general election that are the closest to their ideology, they'll support them for that reason as well. Because if you look at Jill Stein, right, she's probably farther left and probably more libertarian than Bernie Sanders is, but she's never going to win a general election because she's running as a Green candidate.
yeah,
Exactly.
and that was the thing. I think when most of us really started in this, once we got past the whole, for those of us that had those phases, got past the whole neocon or neoliberal phase, a lot of us really swung towards that third party electoral vote.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people nowadays don't like. A lot of people still try and push that idea, like, oh, voting for the third party really works, stuff like that. And that's why we have these people supporting things like declaring themselves as certain things to take away from the third party vote. Bernie Sanders, Ron Paul, and Paul are an example. They take away from the third party votes by declaring themselves X party,
Mm-hmm.
and
Or
then
just a little bit further away, a little bit more extreme than the opposition.
And I noticed that it happens a lot around the time of the elections, because most of the time people don't care. They'll say, yeah, the entire system's, completely fucked. We can't deal with this. But then when elections roll around,
it's
everyone's
apathy.
opinion changes.
That seems to be one of our greatest.
But I also think that in that same way, politicians are able to capitalize on that apathy because they have 2 or 3 sound bites in a commercial that people hear and they, oh, that's the candidate for me. Not really.
Of course,
I mean,
like it's not like beneficial for people to like know what the fuck's going on. I mean, it is, but like to them, they just don't see it that way. They're like, yeah, I'd rather just like put my dick in things and like get paid and not worry about this.
Right.
Like,
Our presidential election has turned into American Idol.
It basically,
Does anyone
it fucking
think-
has like. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw that Kanye like fucking declared he was going to run in 2020. Like,
Wait, go. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, how fucking absurd is that? That just like people in pop culture are just like, oh, this is a fucking game, and we'll just like run for president. Like, that's the next step in my career. Like, that's fucking ridiculous.
I think I have to put the blame on Donald Trump for that because he was just a businessman who had a lot of media attention, and then he started saying, "Oh, I'm going to run for president." Back in 2012.
Well, guys, look at California. Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor.
Right.
But he had some political foothold, at least.
Well,
but
I guess I'll make
roided out.
actor. So I guess I'll make 2 points here. I've got the first one, whatever. I'll throw it over to Donald Trump then. I think that Trump is the candidate. I don't know if you guys saw what quote he has, but it's that if I run as a Republican, I'll be able to win because they're all stupid and blah, blah, blah.
I saw
I don't know
that.
if you guys have seen that. I don't know if you guys had the app Show of Hands, but there was a poll on there saying that Britney Spears is going to run in 2020 as well. So it's now just something to get attention. I don't think they're actually going to do it, but it's just, I just need to market myself a little more so just a couple more people make more money.
yeah,
Well,
Right.
the thing with Kanye that really irks me is Kanye has the ego to do it.
Right.
No, yeah, I can totally see him fucking doing it. Like, he's so full of himself that he probably thinks he could like legitimately win. He thinks he has like a legit chance to actually like win a presidential election, which is just insane.
I have nothing against Kanye's music. I don't like it, but I don't dislike it. I have no opinion on it, honestly. But his ideas politically would just be worthless, honestly. He's a musician.
It was like
He's-
Waka Flocka. He's like,
he
the first
has
thing to do
ideas.
is like
Yeah.
legalize marijuana.
Which
Like,
I'm all for.
I'm all for that too, but like, I mean, that you can't just stop there. Like, that's not a good.
Yeah, foreign policy. Okay, Waka Flocka's elected president and he legalizes marijuana. And then, ISIS is terrorizing the Middle East.
There be no war
Send
once
them
pods
weed.
is no man.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're like fucking airdropping
Just
like
airdrop
20 tons of weed.
Just
Exactly.
just do it. You know, everyone's bitching about chemtrails. Actually, do that. Just drop pure THC over the whole Middle East, and just watch. Just watch. There'd be no more war.
I mean,
I'm not seeing a down. I'm not seeing a downside here.
Flock 2016.
I feel like we are getting a little off topic here. So
Yeah, let's go back. Let's go to Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, I think, is the worst of the bunch, and it's not because of him himself. It's because of the people that support him.
I completely agree with that. I think that's a really astute observation.
Yeah, it's the fact that libertarian capitalists and anarcho-capitalists will vehemently support him just because he's the son of Ron Paul. I mean,
yeah, I was just about to say that.
Most of us, I feel like, have seen the videos of him or Adam Kokesh pointing out the fact that Rand Paul has physically denied any correlation to the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, Adam Kokesh's video on Rand Paul was insane. Like, if you guys haven't seen that, go watch it. Like, if you support Rand Paul and you haven't seen that video, go fucking watch it. You will not support Rand Paul after watching that video.
If the way I see it is, if Rand Paul truly is a libertarian, he's lying to the populace, and it can only go one way. If he does get elected, he will fail. Nothing will get enacted. Nothing will work. The people will turn against him, and he'll either be, because he opposes the status quo, he will either be assassinated, impeached, or overruled on every single standpoint that he has.
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate here, though, because I'm running the campaign for him for the WIU mock presidential election, so let me just play devil's advocate here. And I'm not saying that anything you've said is wrong, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I saw the Kokesh video. I know what you're talking about. But I think that the rationale that a lot of libertarians, and possibly ANCAPs as well, the rationale they have on this is that he's the closest we've got, and if we get him, we may get that societal shift that we don't need as much government that we need to form a freer society. And I think that's the only way you can rationalize that to make it work.
The same goes for Bernie and
well,
I don't want to call them the left, but air quotes left in America, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's a clash of cultures. It's like, it's not just a political ideology. There's two different sets of people that believe two different sets of things, and they're trying to gain control of the state to have a culture shift towards their whatever end goal
Well, that's the growth of the state.
So, that's what I'm saying. Like, and that brings us to voting later, but we'll touch on that whenever we get there.
And
I'd say
that is. Go ahead, Goat.
I'd say it always backfires on him. You know, any leftist president immediately makes a bad name for, or not leftist, but, you know, liberal president makes a bad name for anything left, and any more libertarian president makes a bad name for any libertarian ideology.
And see, that is the exact thing that people have been discussing with Bernie Sanders. If he succeeds, none of it's going to go to socialism. But if he fails, socialism's immediately blamed. But to get back,
I completely agree.
But to get back to the point that Patrick was discussing, my issue with that is, like they were saying, you can use the same sort of ideals for Bernie Sanders, and that he's the closest thing. But the issues with that and the people that support him is the fact that even if he does have some means to get elected, and as we're seeing right now, Rand Paul is rapidly dropping in the polls.
Well, he's not, but go ahead.
But the issue is, if he even does get elected, the likelihood that the Senate or House of Representatives will actually allow any of his ideas to pass without him utilizing state power to its fullest extent is nigh, like, it's
slim to none.
Okay, well then I'd respond to that then by saying that you know all the unilateral action that Obama has used during his term, and if Rand Paul is able to use that same action unilaterally, which I don't agree with, but if it's the only way to actually increase freedom and increase liberty and stop this perpetual state of drug war and privacy, encroachments and spying and war, I'm not seeing a problem with it.
Well, I don't even think he'd do that, though, because I mean, he's been just Constitution this, Constitution that, like, the whole time, and that's not, like, I mean, it's like if he's gonna go out and preach that he wants to reduce the size of government, it doesn't like it's not very consistent for him to go use state power to.
But everyone reaches a point at which they will say, "I'm done. I'm not going to use the constitutional process anymore to give people freedom. I'm going to use whatever means I can to give people freedom." Now, I'm not saying that he's going to reach that point, but I think that point exists in every politician. Most people just don't get there.
All right, how many people, like, this sounds like we all care about the future of America, so how many people actually do care and think that there could be some positive change?
Absolutely.
Well, there can be
Well,
positive
I don't
change
care about, like, okay, I don't know how to phrase this. Go ahead.
At this rate, I honestly don't think that, like, I really do support a better America. But the issue I see is with things as they are now and the current support for the state, I feel like the likelihood that we will achieve that in our lifetime has become slim because of people's opinions on politics and their lack of interest in it.
Right. I think the apathy of the whole situation, like people just not give a fuck, like that's a huge problem. Because you have all these like people that don't give a shit and that are uninformed walking into voting booths using the guns of the state to point at whoever they think is the bad guy.
But can you blame them for not caring?
Well, no, that was like I said earlier. I mean, like it's like willful ignorance, and I don't blame them. I mean, like I didn't fucking find this shit interesting. I'd just be like going around like trying to get my dick sucked and like find food and like have shelter. Like I'd just be basic needs. It's not like I'm gonna sit down and like think about the future of the country. Like people don't do that. They just like have other shit to do.
But
so,
I think more and more people are.
All right.
Like, have you guys not noticed more and more? There's more political people out.
No, I think more and more. I think more people respond to propaganda now because it's so much more easy to get to them. So when they see, oh, Bernie Sanders is saying that we should all get free college and free healthcare, they say, oh yeah, that's great. They don't actually think about what the ramifications of that policy would be. They say, oh yeah, I want free stuff, give it to me. And I think it's that entitlement mentality that our entire generation has, that because we have instant gratification when it comes to technology, you know, pick one. That instant gratification leads to this entitlement mentality that you are entitled to free things just because you exist, and I think that that's something that societally we need to change. That's not going to be changed by voting booths.
Yeah, I
agree.
I can actually completely agree with that.
Well, what about, like, I wouldn't say they feel entitled because they exist, but because being that they do pay taxes and they are part of the system, they feel like they're entitled because of that, not just because they exist.
Well, you get kind of to a point there, like, where do you put a limit on it? Then, like, what are you not entitled to?
And that's the thing that I feel is that claiming because you pay taxes you are entitled is to be perfectly blunt, a bullshit claim.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. It's like, well, you guys...
Every single person pays into the system, and
not everybody.
Not
but a lot
everyone.
of people.
Not everyone.
Okay, yeah. You have a point there.
Mostly everyone.
Yeah, a lot of people pay into the system, and because of that, they feel entitled. But then they blame the class that does not pay into the system for their strife. The class that doesn't pay into the system blames the class that pays into the system, and it's a constant bickering match.
Right, they're not looking at the
side...
source of the conflict, which is the state. It's not the people that don't fucking pay. It's the state that's the problem.
And the state perpetuates this rich versus poor narrative that's been around for forever. But it was especially put into words by Marx that, oh, well, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, which in America is not true. They're both getting richer. But because of that, people say, oh, well, the rich are so evil and I deserve their money. Which is not, it's not the way it is.
Well, I guess because I've been reading a lot of Marx and Engels lately, I'd say it's not that Marx thought that it was just rich are getting richer, poor getting poorer, but that they are dialectically opposed classes, not because of their wealth, but because of ownership because of means of production.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the state, in a different way, makes that same argument. Instead of using the means of production, instead they say that it's just wealth. It's just monetary instead of capital.
All right, yeah, fair. I agree. So,
Alright.
we want to go on to whether or not we think voting actually
Change
works.
the-
Yeah, I think we're at a good point to switch.
We are. Hold on, let me check where we're at. We're at like 20 minutes in. So.
Cool.
So
Nice.
yeah, I think it's a good point to transition to that because I think these next two topics should be fairly. This topic might be shorter than most, but I feel the last
The
topic,
last one will be
Yeah.
lengthy.
especially with someone playing devil's advocate, I feel we should be fairly good on. Like, should take a fairly long time.
All right,
Alright.
that will be me. But go on.
So we're talking about the effects of voting here, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that in our modern system, no. I mean, voting doesn't really change much because for the most part, it's all big money that controls elections. Whoever gets the most money is going to be able to run the most ads and get their message to the most people. That's how it is.
See, I don't think it's. I think that's the biggest factor of the bunch, but I think also with the fact of the mixing the electoral college into it.
Well, I mean, the electoral college almost always goes the way of their state. Almost always.
But
Doesn't
the
really matter.
issue with that is how they.
How it's split up.
It's gerrymandering county to county in order to better support the candidate that state wants. Is
Well,
what I say.
are you talking about a federal election? Because the way it works for a federal election is it's just the overall vote of the state. Whichever way the state goes, all of the votes go towards one candidate instead of individual counties getting their own electoral vote, which I think would be a better system.
What I'm saying is that each they warp everything so that it goes the way that they really want it. Because
Right. Well, who's they?
I've lived in a state that California was extremely torn.
Sounds like Antonio Gramsci's theory of cultural hegemony. What you just said. Basically, the ruling class will affect basically society and culture in order to justify itself. So basically, the superstructure justifies the base.
Right.
Yeah. That doesn't necessarily have to be the capitalist class. It's the same with, the feudal, in feudalism.
Right.
Same with mercantilism, all that stuff.
Right. I think that's a really good way to put it, and I completely agree with what Cole was saying about federal elections. I think they're absolutely useless. I mean, your vote doesn't matter. You're voting you're trying to have an informed vote against millions and millions and millions of other people that just don't fucking care and that have no idea what it is that they're actually doing. They're just oh, this is a thing that we do because the government says that we should go vote and it's our civic duty and all this other shit. So they walk into voting booths and they're oh, well, here, I'm just going to vote straight down the party line, or I'm going to vote for whatever. I mean, they just vote for all manner of shit that doesn't make any fucking sense. And that's that's why the federal elections just don't work. I mean, there's too many uninformed voters that just walk into voting booths, and you can't ever get an intelligent majority of people to make an informed decision. That's just not going to happen.
Most people aren't informed or intelligent.
Right.
That's a simple fact, and I hate to say that because I sound like I'm an asshole, but that's a simple fact that if you go around and you ask 10 people what they think about the politics right now, they're oh yeah, it's all right, whatever.
I took a psychology class in high school, and we watched a video, an extremely simple video, and it was a man going around a college campus asking people to sign a petition to end women's suffrage. Now,
I've seen that
I feel
one.
most of us understand what women's suffrage is.
Right.
And
such a basic concept would be something you would expect people to know.
Yeah, and most people, most of us here at least, would understand that ending women's suffrage would be a bad thing. But when
I'm actually for ending all suffrage.
Yeah. Good call, Eric. Good call.
Eric, don't confuse people, for the love of God. But most of the people actually signed the petition to end women's suffrage when most of us realize that ending women's suffrage ends women's right to vote and things like that.
I think there was another one where people voted to ban dihydrogen monoxide.
Yeah.
I think that was Penn and Teller, but I'm not sure.
Even so, but still, I mean, you know that obviously they're warped in order to. The psychology one might not be because they actually posted statistics after, but things like Penn and Teller, you see that they might be warped in all sort of. I'm trying to think of the word. A confirmation bias.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And I think we can all agree, though, that is caused directly by the fault of the education system. And I think we can all draw this back and say that it's the fault of the state that such people are so uninformed and apathetic when it comes to politics. Just because they were never taught how to be informed.
As Winston Churchill said, though, the winner writes history.
Exactly.
Through that, we have been able to rewrite things to fit our agenda. That's why we consider socialism today to be a totalitarian state, when in actuality, socialism
idealistic.
All right, well, if we're getting into education, then that does tie into the whole voting thing, because if you can control what, how people are educated and the things that they supposedly know, you can control their ideas, and you can basically undermine democracy and get them to vote whatever way they want.
That's the whole point that the state runs education. Yeah. Like, that's why there's public schools, so they can fucking teach you to be an idiot. You're just, like Carlin said, you're smart enough to work the machine, but you're too dumb to know what's going on.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that starts at a very young age when you learn the Pledge of Allegiance, that you always have to be loyal to your country.
Right.
A question for you guys, actually, to get a little off topic here. How many of you actually stood for the Pledge of Allegiance, and when did you finally stop? Or have you?
I did it all the way through elementary school.
For me, I stopped doing it my freshman year of high school.
Same with me, Adam.
Yeah, I stopped freshman.
For me, it was in high school that I finally stopped. The other question I wanted to tie into it was your Pledge of Allegiance the original Pledge of Allegiance, or the changed one that said "Under God"?
Under God.
Under God.
I didn't even know they. I didn't know they changed it.
Yeah.
My schools actually never used the Under God version.
So confession here, and I'm gonna feel really bad about this, but I always stood and I always said it just because I never really thought anything of it.
That's alright.
But I mean, that was before I became an anarchist, though. So I mean, I guess
I think that actually points out a really good thing. I don't think most kids don't really think about it when they.
Yeah, they just do it. It just becomes routine for them.
Yeah, like maybe when they were like really young and they felt really patriotic. Oh, I want to be a soldier when I grow up, and they actually meant something to them. But through middle school and high school, they're just like, whatever. It's just something to do.
For someone I add there, that so many people that are going to be soldiers, or they're soldiers now, they are just so blind when it comes to the atrocities that their government carries out. It's just unbelievable to me that people that, I mean, they've trained. You think they're such. I thought they were very intelligent individuals when I had them in high school, and they go out, they join the military, and they come back and they're just completely brainwashed. It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, I've had multiple friends that have enlisted into the Marine Corps. My whole family is military related, and I've seen what it does to people. I mean, on top of my personal experience with or anecdotal experience with this, through family and friends, I've seen other people such as Adam Kokesh that discuss it.
Right.
And the atrocities that you see, the horrors you feel when you come back. To this day, my uncle still thinks the only thing that he's good at is killing people.
Wow. And you see, that's something, again, that would never happen if there wasn't a state.
And not just that, it's the, to really go into it, it's the military-industrial complex that we have created.
Right. MIC, baby. MIC.
We necessitate war for our country to thrive. Without it, our country has no... Our economy would crash.
I don't know if it would crash. It would be significantly impacted.
I don't know if I agree that this is all the fault of the state either.
Well, then let me then kind of expand upon what I was going to say. So I say that it's the fault of the state because if there was no state, there would be no reason to have a gigantic military. There would be no reason to not indoctrinate people that killing people is okay. And there would be no war from the people within that society. The only war that would happen was if one person aggressed against another.
And since I've been reading, Marx and Engels and even Lenin,
Yeah.
I'll respond with this: is that
Sure.
With the current capitalist system, imperialism and war stems from the fact that from competition in business and fighting over basically economic resources, and it's not the fault of the state.
I would disagree with that because our current system is set up for perpetual growth. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not so much that there's competition. It's that the state needs to keep growing and growing, and consuming more resources. I think that's more the issue.
Might I add that there's never actually been full capitalism. There has always been some sort of government intervention within the market, and then by definition, it's not capitalism.
I don't think you can.
Well,
really,
I disagree with that definition too. I think capitalism, if we're gonna have a bare bones definition of capitalism, it's private ownership of the means of production. Just like socialism, its bare bones definition is collective ownership of the means of production. Yes. I think that'd be a fair enough definition.
I will agree wholeheartedly with Eric. I can't agree with Patrick in the idea that true capitalism has never existed. Capitalism, I feel, is an umbrella term just like socialism would be,
right?
Or is, in the fact that it entails a lot of different ideologies.
That's true.
There is authoritarian ideologies that fit the umbrella term of capitalism and socialism.
Right.
And I don't think a market entails capitalism, obviously, as a mutualist, but right. I do feel that the capitalist mode requires a market, obviously.
Well, right. And I think that the problem you have there, though, is that our system now that gets blamed for so much is it's crony capitalism, basically.
Yes.
Right? It's government working with big business to drive out the competition, whether from minimum wage laws or increased regulations.
Mussolini himself called it fascism, which fascism was meant to be the cooperation of state and industrial power.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And which, if we really look at it, most of us can definitely agree that what we consider crony capitalism is a form of fascism.
Absolutely.
But I definitely agree with Eric that what our current state is growth for the sake of growth. And as Edward Abbey said, growth for the sake of growth is cancer.
Yep. But I also think, and I've written about this before, saying that the state will always grow. That's something that it's always going to do. It's always going to try to grow. So the only logical solution then is to abolish the state, because regardless, libertarians have this great idea, we'll just get the government just small enough, and then we'll be okay. No, the government will always try to grow.
Right.
And for that reason, you must abolish it.
I think we can all agree with that. I think that was what most of us were trying to say when we were discussing Rand Paul. I think that's...
correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like a lot of people are saying, or it's implied almost that the state and the economic system are in no way connected whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Wait, you disagree with that?
No, I think that you're right. I think that the state it may have an influence on the economic system, but in the absence of the state, many economic systems would be present.
Well, see, I would say it's like the other way around almost, where the economic system directly influences the state. And maybe there's an interrelationship, and it's not just one affecting the other.
I think it's more of like a symbiotic, it's where they, as of now, they both rely on each other.
Okay.
Kind of.
Yeah,
but, because I do think if you have socialism, I think a couple of you are Marxists or socialists, if you have socialism, we don't have this government right now because it's bankrupt, right?
See, but Matt, I have a question for you.
Yeah?
Seeing that you've been playing devil's advocate tonight, especially in discussing more state socialist ideas, wouldn't the same thing occur through a state socialist system?
Of what? What would occur? What do you mean?
A poor state controlling and growing. Growth for the sake of growth is part of the state, and how would a socialist state differ from that?
I don't necessarily think that it would.
Right.
Yeah, I think the problem with the state is it's just like that's inherent in the nature of what the state is. Like its very essence is to dominate and to expand and to grow. Like it's just to have power over other people with force. It's a monopoly on the use of force, basically.
Right. Well,
and so,
I guess I could respond, Cole, with saying that the supposed withering away of the state, where it is supposed to grow, but once the contradictions of class are done away with and private property is done away with, the need for the state goes away and is slowly absolved, I guess.
But
that seems unrealistic.
That. Yeah,
I mean, it does.
Not only unrealistic, but then
we've seen. I mean,
historically,
that's the one thing with speaking with socialism is we really discuss history and Proudhon. Like to use my own people as an example, Tucker, Proudhon, and Warren, they all attempted to use state to end the state. They all attempted to use means of ending the state from within inside.
Right.
Yet none of them succeeded in shrinking the state. Rand Paul, Ron Paul are both another great examples, and then
I completely agree, and whenever I'm having this discussion with libertarians, I always ask them, it's like we have a perfect example of having the smallest government known to mankind at its inception being created, and then now you have one of the largest, if not the largest, and most violent and dangerous governments of all time coming from the smallest. I mean, and the state doesn't reverse itself, and I always ask them to give me examples of the state reversing itself and staying permanently small, and I have yet to receive an adequate answer on that one. So I don't think it's possible.
We have people, like, historically speaking, we have people like, I won't use Lenin because there were medical issues that popped in there, but his ideas were overtaken by Stalin and created an atrocious system. But then we have people like Mao who led a workers' revolution and then took state control.
And killed
can I say that I don't think I think Lenin's ideas did have something to do with it, and then Stalin's warping of them into Marxism-Leninism. But those ideas also were born out of, like, the material conditions and social relations of pre-industrial Russia at the time. It was a necessary outcome of the conditions.
To outline the failures of state market socialism, we can look at people like Tito.
Yugoslavia,
yeah. And we can see, I mean, I will not deny that anarchists have had our failure, but most of ours isn't. Most of our failures are different in nature from that of the state.
In that less people are harmed when we fail.
Failure to defend itself from the state is what seems to have been the issue.
It seems like anarchists are usually failing because of external forces and not so much.
That seems to be the common consensus among anarchists. For people like Eric and Patrick who are ANCAPs, we can use Ireland, for example, with the Wasp. That lasted thousands of years until British power came in.
Exactly.
You can look at Catalonia, Spain.
Ish.
Can we say that it's truly external if we know, like, ahead of time, based on the history, that they can't defend themselves because they aren't organized as a state? That a state is necessary for the protection of a revolution.
I don't think so. I think the problem that they fail to, I think the thing that they fail to address is the elimination of the current state. If you're going to have a revolution and you are going to do it right, I think you need to eliminate the people in power that pose a threat to you and a threat to your movement. If that's what if your ultimate goal is to achieve your society and you want to implement your system, you have to destroy that which will destroy you.
But that's not the only thing, though. I think that's a good start, but then you also have the problem of the people that would rise up after you're finished with your revolution, saying you win, and would just form another state.
But the thing with that is, like,
let Cole go. Hold on. Cole, say something.
I'll have something for both. I feel like I definitely agree with Eric, and I think the Clive and Bundy situation, while I'm not extremely educated on it, I feel like that is a perfect example of a populace rising up against the state to oppose their ideas and still standing together to support it. While I feel their only reason for winning that situation was the fact that the state felt it was a menial, worthless thing, I feel like that's a perfect example, is the populace rising up strong enough to actually crush the state. And with their situation, it was more of a, well, do we really need this land type of discussion. But I feel like the people actually overpowering the state is an important thing. But to get to the second time, what was... Someone said something else, shit, and I lost it.
Was it me?
It might have been. I'm pretty sure.
I said that the people that are remaining after the state falls will just simply form another state.
Okay, the reactionaries. Well, what I see, yeah, that's what I would call reactionary.
Absolutely, by definition.
They have they have intention to create a state, which what I see with that is that if they actually have that intention, they'll either fail and be wholeheartedly opposed and shut down, or succeed in a means such as Stalin.
But I mean, if you look at our society currently today, there are more people that want a state than people that do not want a state. So,
well, of course,
a violent revolution, there has to be a societal shift where you are able to convince people having a state is better than having one.
I completely agree with you, but like, here's the thing. So if you say we have a violent revolution tomorrow and we eliminate the U.S. government, and there's another group, this is extreme, like, hypothetical situation. Yeah. So say that happens, and we eliminate the U.S. government. They are no longer a threat to our revolution, and now there's more people that want to institute a state. So the thing that they would have to do, well, there's two things. So their new state would not be nearly as large as the U.S. government, which is a big plus right off the bat. And so we've just had a revolution and hopefully a societal shift against a state. So the new people implementing a state will be opposed by a majority of the society, which makes it way, way, way harder for them to implement their state. And there's probably still more armed people out there that are not done fighting. They're like, oh, well, fuck this. We're not having another state. We just got rid of one. Like, this is not going to happen.
And if I might add to that, I'd say that I think voluntarism is not a bad system. In that if you're going to have a small state within a small group of people, that's fine.
Right. I'm not, like, completely anti-state. Like, I mean, if you want to have your own fucking state and you want to be subjugated to that, knock yourself out. Just
make sure it's everyone. It has to be unanimous.
Exactly. I think Stirner, I'll use Stirner as a perfect example here. The idea of the egoist anarchism is it's not collective egoism. I can't think of the word right now.
Union of egoists?
Union of egoists, yes. Thank you, Adam. So the idea of the union of egoists is just the agreed upon working together of these people for their own personal gains. And to range outside of that is to warp it into something completely different. What I see is that for those of you like myself that while you support anarchism, you can't support forced anarchism because that warps what anarchism itself is.
Well, I think that's why voluntarism is the best system, because there are always people that feel like they have to be controlled. There has to be a state. So as long as that state is only interfering within a small amount of people, there's no problem.
Voluntarism, I think, has been really warped to be set to a specific
economic system.
Yeah, most people think voluntarism and they immediately think anarcho-capitalist.
And I think the thing that we need to redefine that word to be anarchism without adjectives, I think, because that's what it is. Like, voluntarism is just anarchism without adjectives.
Hey, wait, Joe, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say it's basically in the nature of a state to not be necessarily voluntary for all the people involved. So if there were a voluntary state, I don't think it could be entirely voluntary for all the people who would be affected by it.
No, I completely agree, and I think if people want to go make a state, and like, I'm not saying it'll be voluntary, but like, if you want to have your own state, honestly, I don't care, just as long as I'm not involved and you're not pointing guns at me. because you will have guns pointed back at you.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid.
All right, can I?
What I see is that if you do decide to create a state, if you are to intend to use that state in any way to exert force on any other group, you deserve any reaction from
anarchists.
not supporting
Okay.
the state.
So
And
we've kind of
guys, do we wanna
transitioned.
shift? Yeah.
We've already kind of transitioned just naturally from whether or not anarchism is idealistic, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Which brings me to where I'm talking about is like we've been talking a lot about ideas and how they change society and how if we just get everyone to have the right ideas, then we can bring about whatever system your preferable system. But I would say that you can't have a change in ideas unless you have a change in the material conditions that people live in, because people's ideas and understandings of the world are based on the material world around them and their social relations. So you have to change the material world first, and you can't just... Ideas aren't just like these... Like we're not just in a bubble. We live in a world where everything around us affects each other. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I think that would be one of the best arguments for voting, is that if that shift is not going to happen anytime soon. So either I don't know if you guys have heard of the Fail State Project, but that's an organization that's just trying to make the whole thing crash and burn and start from scratch. And personally, I don't really see a problem with that, but I think that's one of the things that if you're really going to support something, it's probably going to be along the lines of that, to actually cause that societal change that people will think, okay, well, we do need, we don't need a state. It's not a requirement to have a civilized society.
I do want to touch on that real quick before we go back, because the Fail State Project is just like really interesting, because to me, like, I like the idea of it, but knowing the current culture that we have, I think it'd be fucking horrible. Because, like, how bad would it have to get for people to be like, okay, this is the worst fucking thing that's ever gonna happen? I mean, like, people let shit go all the time today with the current state. They just, like, don't fucking care, and it goes back to the apathy that we were talking about earlier. They're like, whatever, as long as they're not shooting at me, I guess I don't really care. Like, it's that kind of shit, and I think it'd go to, like, an extreme. Like, it'd have to be, like, really bad. They're killing, like, millions of people before they're like, okay, this is getting out of control.
It's a recession when your neighbor's out of a job. It's a depression when you're out of a job, and it's a revolution when everyone's out of a job.
Well put.
Right?
Yeah. I've never heard that before. I like that.
Actually, well, the first two have been said before, but the last one was mine.
Well, it was a nice addition.
Thank you.
So where are we gonna go from here?
How long have we been going?
I think we've got like 10 minutes.
On my device it says 47 minutes in.
All right.
Yeah, we've got about 10 more minutes or so. I feel like we can take it out a little bit more and discuss a little bit more.
Sure. Anything in particular anyone wants to touch on?
I don't know.
I think we should probably hold off on the ideological arguments until next time, but...
I agree.
But so far this is pretty good. How about, like, nationalism?
Oh, God.
That's got to be its whole own episode.
All right,
honestly, I'm good if we call it here. I think we've covered quite a bit of information.
Well, I mean, I think there still is a little bit of discourse we have left, though. I mean, if we want to run this the whole
Any
hour.
questions that anybody that like wanted to say something that didn't get to say it, you can say it now.
Or any questions for anyone.
Would you guys say that well, I'm mostly referring to insurrectionary anarchists here. Would you say actually educating people and going out to the public is better than doing black blocs and smashing up windows?
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think both, honestly, would be the ideal.
Do you guys follow Buddhism at all?
I know about it. I don't follow it, though.
Okay.
What I mean is, that I kind of may have worded it, but I mean, do you, like, of course, educating the public, but over actually going out and causing material damage to state buildings or corporate buildings.
No.
I think attacking state buildings is a good idea, not corporate buildings.
All right, good job, guys. We just got on the NSA watch list. This is our second episode in.
I've been on it forever, so all right.
Okay, well, let me go back to
this
what I was
is the first
say.
thing to get me to the NSA watch list. I'm going to be kind of disappointed in myself.
Same, seriously.
Good job. Okay, so I'm going to take this back. So Tibet...
You can't buy drugs anymore.
God damn it, Cole. So Tibet is not its own state. It's been fighting to get that. So what a lot of Tibetan monks will do is set themselves on fire in the street to kind of
Self-immolation.
Right.
Yeah, we really want to. We have a
saying, okay, this is
the national liberation movements.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we can discuss them a little bit. If we go a little bit over the 1 hour limit, I think it's fun.
Right.
Yeah,
because I feel like most of us here agree with the national liberation movements in a sense.
And how they differ from nationalism.
Yeah, at least.
I really think we need to make that clear to a lot of people, because it took me a while to understand the difference between national liberation and nationalism. So I think we should definitely talk about that.
National liberation movements have a real strong stance in where because a lot of the claims against them are based in nationalistic senses.
Right.
The Israel-Palestine conflict, for example, is primarily a religious claim that the Jews have claimed that land due to their being the chosen people of God, when in actuality, there's a lot that ties into it, but I mean...
That's a very complicated issue that you may not
want to... A lot of the issue is most of the Jews that currently reside in Israel are actually Hellenistic Jews, as opposed to the Palestinians who actually descend from a race that inhabited the land predating the predating the Jewish people. And as most of us know, the Israelites, which the actual, what is it, Hasidic? No. Semitic. The actual Semitic Jews would descend from the Israelites, but the Israelites were a nomadic people. But we also have to think about the fact that any religious claim that the Jewish people have to the land was lost with the New Testament, and the fact that they actually deny Christ as a Messiah. Because the way that it
very close to
looked at, if we look at it from a religious standpoint, the ones that would have the most claim to the land would be the Christians. The ones that have the second most claim would be Islam, due to the fact that they accept Jesus as a Messiah, but they don't accept him as the last Messiah. And the Jews would be the last ones to actually have stake to the land, due to the fact that they don't even accept the fact that Jesus was meant as the Messiah. And this is coming from someone who doesn't believe in religion personally. But this is explained from a religious standpoint. But then, if we were to look at it from a historical standpoint, the Palestinians lay the most claim to the land due to the fact that they actually have Semitic descent. As we noted, most of the Jews are Hellenistic. But the issue with this claim that I see in myself is the fact that, in a sense, it is still a nationalistic claim and creating borders, which opposes anarchism. So, to this day, I still support a two-party system. I just support the killing of Netanyahu.
I support a no-state solution and the killing of Netanyahu.
All right, you know what, Eric? Go fuck yourself.
Hey, I'm just keeping it real, man.
I don't care. I don't care.
All right.
Let's get the fuck out of the region. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, that I can wholeheartedly agree with. Let's get the U.S. fuck out of every single nation.
I think the differentiation needs to be made here, because I think there's a couple of varying definitions when it comes to national liberation, because it normally is applied to colonial oppression, whereas the way we're using it is it's state oppression. So I thought I'd throw that out there, make sure that differentiation was made.
Yeah.
We've discussed the Palestinians, but let's also discuss the Tibetan movement with that, because that's also an important part of the national liberation movement. Is Tibet?
So I think I tried to say that, and my internet fucked out. So
we got a little bit of it, but let's get everyone else's, because I definitely can agree with Patrick in the in the sense that I've learned about Buddhism myself. I find it extremely interesting, and
I'm in the process of converting, so
the fact
that.
that the Dalai Lama, who is the focal point of a major focal point, I should say, of Buddhism, was actually he was put on a watch list, basically, in Tibet. If he were to enter the state, enter the area of Tibet, he would be arrested immediately on sight. He has been banned from Tibet, and that is his home. And to actually see something like that, I think that is just extremely wrong, especially on it's China that controls it, is it not?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I think the thing is that again, that would only happen in the case of a state because you'd have freedom of association and freedom of movement, right? So I think that obviously Tibet should be its own state. China should not have any control over it. It shouldn't be like a Taiwan that China still controls it, but they have their own kind of independent thing going. It should be its own state, period.
Completely agree.
So it sounds like, some of you realize that in our current way of living, sometimes the state is necessary, just not out of for practical reasons. I guess I would say. I'm trying to say.
Well, what do you mean?
Like you said,
what circumstances?
Tibet should be its own state.
Well, I mean, if we're, in the context of national liberation movements, if we're trying to have people be free in our current situation, then I guess the best you can hope for is them getting their own state. Yeah.
I think
the transition. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I think we're really we may be confusing people in our use of the word state since we've switched it twice today. When we were originally discussing anarchism, we were talking about the state control, which was a governmental state. When we talk about the national liberation movement, we're really talking about a state based on borders, the ability to exist outside, not as a satellite nation of a country, but to exist as your own free state. Like Palestine... Most of us, to this day, the only reason we know Palestine is because of the news broadcasting things of Palestine attacking Israel. Or most of us don't know that Tibet exists outside of China, and that it was originally its own state, but has been occupied by China.
I think I could probably make the comparison between the EZLN, the Zapatista movement in Mexico, Chiapas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. The EZLN is a great example of fighting state oppression. As Mexico, I grew up in California, so I was about 45 minutes away from the border, and most of what happens in Mexico is due to government corruption.
And I'd say U.S. economic imperialism.
Yeah, exactly. And what the EZLN is trying to do is to fight that oppression, because Mexico isn't a poor country. Mexico is poor because of the corruption of its country. These state leaders are all working with Mexican cartels and South American cartels and stuff like that.
And NAFTA had a huge effect.
Yeah, and the U.S. The U.S. has had a major effect on the corruption of Mexico.
Well, especially the drug trade.
Wasn't the Contra scandal? That
wasn't in Mexico.
I was in Nicaragua, I believe.
Okay, yeah. But things such as that, we've stemmed ourselves into Mexico and South America and corrupted the governments there. And the Iran-Contra scandal is, strictly speaking, Nicaraguan, but we've interfered in other governments there. We've overthrown democratically elected leaders, and it's not just strictly in South America and Mexico, but also
all over the world.
Yeah.
He overthrew.
Ran multiple times.
Yeah, Muhammad Mossadegh was one of the greatest, best earliest examples in the Middle East.
Guatemala, Chile.
Yeah, and
Chile.
puppet dictatorships. There's another example of in Haiti, Juan Baptiste Aristide, which we actually overthrew him, installed a military dictatorship, found out that the military dictatorship was doing the exact thing that we overthrew Aristide for, took out the military dictatorship, and put Aristide back in power again.
Sounds similar to Bolivia, too, just for knowing what Che Guevara fought against. By the way, we have like a minute left. He reached an hour.
I can agree with you to some extent, Matt, but at the same time, I also think about I think most leftists overdo the good that Che Guevara did, because while he was a supporter of an anarchistic society, or a Marxist society, if I recall correctly.
It was Marxist.
He was technically a Marxist-Leninist. He wrote to his aunt as Stalin II. That's just one of the unflattering facts about Che, but that's true.
That's my major issue with Che Guevara, is the fact that he actually supported Castro's state. Castro is exactly like Mao and Stalin. Any Maoist or Stalinist can look at these people and point out the good things that they did. The issue is when they ignore the bad things that they have done. Stalin industrialized Russia in a record time. No one can deny that.
Yeah, basically pre-industrial fuel.
He had on pre-industrial Russia, switching to an industrialized Russia.
If I just might make a final point here, because I think we're running out of time. I don't think a lot of societies, at least not anytime soon, are going to actually institute anarchism of any kind. That's just
I'm under no illusions of grandeur that that's going to happen.
Oh, no. I mean, you look at the Middle East, and under the Islamic faith, there must be a state. There is no anarchism, right? You live under Sharia law. So it's a complete... It's just an impossibility that a society that's dominated by that faith would become anarchistic, and there's other examples of this as well. So I think that it's very, very improbable that many societies will. I think that it's just a hope that ours will.
If I can add to that really quickly, what I see is that many areas won't become anarchistic, and I can completely accept that. But what I see is to declare anarchism a utopian ideal is to make it utopian. The declaration of utopianism, in my eyes, is what actually makes something utopian. So to actually sit there and have the train of thought that, oh, we'll never achieve this in our lifetime, is to actually accept and make the idea that won't ever happen realistic.
Yeah, I've also noticed that people say we won't achieve this in our lifetime. Then they kind of feel
they're just kind of like, well, what the fuck's the point? Like, I'm not going to work for this anymore.
Try.
What I really think is that to state that we won't see this in our lifetime is just as apathetic as the belief in the state. I think we as a people, through education and things such as that, and exerting the power we have, is our means of achieving what we truly want. We can achieve our goals through exerting the power that we personally have, because through the example of the Union of Egoists, if we were to all group together similar to the Clive and Bundy situation, and to stand for what we truly believe in and stand against them, I feel that we would have the opportunity to actually create some sort of movement that would...
There already is a movement like that. It's called the Free State Project. I don't know how many of you guys know about that.
Okay, yeah. Eric...
It wouldn't be an episode if I'm not going to
Briefly
promote the Free State Project.
All right.
Briefly
I kind
Catholic.
of have to do it the same as
I
well.
think-
Sorry.
Like Patrick said, we're starting to run out of time, but being that we ended on a lot of really great topics, I think we should continue with these next week.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
That being
Was-
gone.
Was the time thing like a strict rule, or was that just more of a guideline?
Just more of a guideline.
More
I
of
mean,
a
we're
guideline.
probably over, but it's all right.
We really don't want to go too far, otherwise
Yeah.
people won't watch it.
Yeah, we're slowly
yeah,
losing
I mean, you know.
viewers as we go.
But
But
you
we're
know,
not. Right.
We don't
Well,
care
we're
too
not
much
gonna
about
be
couple
at-
points.
We're not gonna be at 2 hours by the time we're finished here.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the two next topics I think for next week are great are the dictator thing, because I have a lot of things to say about Castro.
All right.
Some of them probably pretty controversial, and I'm not even playing devil's advocate.
Wait,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought we were gonna go politics, philosophy, or I thought we were gonna interchange them.
Yeah, that's
Hey.
fine too.
Let's get the live feed and discuss this.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks
All right,
everyone.
thanks for
Thanks for
watching,
watching.
guys. Thank
Thanks
you.
for watching.
Thank you everyone for watching.
We love you.
Tune in next week. We are going to be aiming for a scheduled setup, but as of right now, we are all still fluctuating. So give us a little bit of time to work things out, and we will hopefully have a set schedule for you guys every single week. So tune in next week for some, or possibly, depending, we may aim for sometime at the very end of this week. But tune in and make
Good.
sure to stay with us, and we hope to see you guys again. For tonight, we wish you all a good night.